Hi, welcome. My name is Tracy Powers. I am a life and relationship coach. I help women live richer lives by improving the quality of their connections with men, themselves, and each other. And really want helping people go from that confusion, that conflict, to the love and passion they always wanted. So I am in the middle of a 40-day advice challenge I gave myself, and I wanted to speak about a topic I'm seeing a lot of questions about, which is setting boundaries. And within the realm of setting boundaries, what to do when it feels like you'll be lonely, when it feels like holding these boundaries and setting these boundaries sort people out in your life, and they have problems with this new dynamic, and you feel almost worse in a way than you did before, even though you know you really want to change these dynamics. So, what I wanted to do is share a little bit about my personal journey and what one slice of this for me that actually has, thankfully, in the long run, and by staying committed to doing the work, has gotten me to a much better place that I had always hoped for. So, a little a little hope, a little light at the end of the tunnel. So first, just setting up what is a boundary. I love Brene Brown's definition of it's what's a delineation between what's okay and what's not okay. But what I also want to stick in here is what a boundary can do for you is set up guardrails for dynamics to occur or to stop occurring. So within any relationship that we're feeling like, I'm gonna hear the dog today, any relationship that you want to create a better connection, you want it to be healthier, you want something to shift, this allows those guardrails for the dynamics that have just been happening, that have been there. Something's got to give, something's got to shift. And so this is a way to get it back on the track that you're hoping for. So for me, in this situation, I was working through a lot of things for myself, and I am a thinker, a lover, a dreamer, and always looking for ways to explore life, to improve life, and had really worked on leaving a relationship because I couldn't get it to where I wanted it to go. And in the process of trying to save it, trying to work through it, discovering a lot, and in the process of eventually leaving and then being with my partner now, giving an opportunity to work through a lot of stuff now that I had a partner that could hold me in it, and wanted to work with me. And so a lot of things were coming to the surface because I now had the capacities and the support to be able to work through it. And so now that I had this in place, I was seeing all these other places where long-term relationships, friendships, whatever, what I'm not going to get too specific, right? But oh, this doesn't work either, and there's a dynamic here that isn't healthy and doesn't work for me. And I was in a position of feeling like, just like I had in my previous romantic relationship, of feeling like I was going to touch a hot stove, and each time I got burned, I'd step back, but I kept going. And where it got to the point, and no fault, I mean, in this relationship, I do know that this person really loved me, really cared about me. And as I prioritize love, I love what my teacher, Allison Armstrong, has shared, that as that is my first highest value, I will learn everything that it is not. And even though what I learned in this process is, even though I know people love me, the way in which they're trying to go about it isn't actually love, isn't actually loving, but it's just the tools that they have. So I felt like there was some judgment, some manipulation, um, some just old patterns of um, wanting me to be a certain way, act a certain way, which I was not anymore. And I think that's a huge piece of this is that as you go on a journey of creating better relationships or creating a better life for yourself, um, honoring yourself becomes such a key part of that. And that means that dynamics that have been there for a long time often need to switch with that as well. And it's really difficult for people to want to change. And as change is kind of forced upon them, it can cause people to react in ways that might show anger, might show sadness, might show kind of a grasping energy to try and keep things the way that they were, or just a confusion. And what I found was I just needed to hold firm in I'm not going to participate in this dynamic in this way. Thankfully, I was working with a really great therapist at the time because there was that tug, that pull, and I think that's what a lot of people are saying in these inquiries and talking about of like the fear of losing the connection, and also that that tug is like, well, maybe it's me, and maybe I want too much, and maybe I'm just not appreciating this, or maybe it's not that bad, or and thankfully having a therapist there to hold my hand and be like, actually, this isn't healthy. This is textbook, and you just have to hold firm. And here's what I want to say is this is the tunnel, right? This is the darkness right in the middle of it. And it makes you want to go back to the light, because you can't see the light at the other end yet. And it's really difficult because for me in this situation, went through a period of time of not speaking, of total disconnection, as I continued to be a stand for what was not acceptable and what needed to change. And in my situation, what I found was holding firm to boundaries actually, as anyone will find, it sorts people out. And thankfully, in this relationship, the relationship was still of a very high value for them. And they realized must have realized in some way that I wasn't going to go backwards. So they could meet me where I was at, or they wouldn't get to have the relationship they wanted. And they kept trying to pull back to that relationship, but now I'm moving it forward. If it's gonna happen, there's gotta be these guardrails, not this old system. And so thankfully for me, it's taken some time. It's not an overnight process. It's just something, again, to stay committed to. And going from that sensation of touching the hot stove, feeling like I would get burned every time, something shifted, thankfully, that I could begin to reach out again, and I didn't get burned. And each time, now we rebuilt trust. And thankfully, this relationship has gotten to a place that I think we've both wanted it to be, and it hasn't been for a long time. But now I'm in a better place. I feel more of my own sovereignty, my own agency. I feel I can honor myself. I'm not slipping into something that's old or unhealthy. And so I wanted to put that out there as an example of, I know how painful it can be to try and shift these dynamics and to hold firm in your boundaries and feel like, what if it doesn't change? What if I do lose this relationship? And what about that pain? And thankfully for me, over time and with that commitment to continue to honor myself, a better dynamic has been formed. And a few tips I can give for this process is one thing I found really valuable is not trying to change the person. So much I wanted things to be different. I wanted them to see my point of view. I wanted them to become something else like I was growing into. And I knew that probably wasn't going to happen, but I was stuck in that position. And I hear this from a lot of people is like, well, I gave them a book or I recommended this or that. And that's not really how people change. So people either change because they're inspired to change or because there's enough pain in the system that they have no other choice. So maybe they'll be inspired by your example or the new energy that you're bringing into your life, or maybe through a boundary and losing contact with you, and they'll feel so much pain that they know they need to step into a new role with you. But by saying, well, this is the way it is now, and this is who I am, and you got to change, not likely to have much movement happening there. So trying not to change, all you have to do is just stay committed to the new values that you want to have and the new type of connection that you want to have. And the number one thing I would say in getting this to happen is continuing to bring the force and energy of love. And so often we're hurt, we're angry, they're hurt, they're angry. It's hard to remember that force of love. But for me, I found a major turning point came when I really said, I'm sorry this is so difficult. And I love you so much that I'm committed to this. And that's out of just love. I won't go back to this. Like, I won't engage in this because I love you and I love us too much. And this is something that I will do with my partner. If, sometimes one of us gets triggered as we're working through things, sometimes the other one gets triggered. But the hardest situation is if both of us get triggered. And that's when I think the most damage can be done in any relationship, is you're both in this kind of fight or flight. And I will stop and say, nope, I'm not going to participate in this right now because I love you too much and I love us too much. And so let's take a break. Let's calm ourselves down, and we can come back and talk about this and get through this conflict and get back to our connection. So making sure it'll keep someone from getting so defensive if you really lead with love and say, I'm doing this just because I love you and I have a better vision for our relationship and I love me. And so it's not out of anger, out of frustration, it is purely out of love. And I always say this about boundaries, and hopefully I can clarify what that means, but they're always best done with kindness and with firmness. So if we are not personally committed to this boundary, we won't make it through the tunnel. We won't make it through the other side. It takes such a strength and such a commitment from you first before you can get their commitment. And I have an example, a personal example, of having been in a previous relationship and having a partner who would, out of nowhere, surprise me with a spank. So I could be in the middle of something and just bolted, and it automatically triggered me from having been spanked as a child, suddenly filled with shame, filled with panic. And And I would say, hey, I don't want this. I don't like this. And it would keep happening. But I knew there was also this energy inside of me of like, maybe it's something I just need to work through. And, maybe I should allow this, maybe this is just like so important to him that I should allow it. Like it's his expression. Um, and that's something that, if I would have been more committed and more firm, I think it would have been less likely for him to just keep slipping because the energy wasn't totally clean. Because I felt that maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should allow this. Where fast forward with my partner now, um, having actual conversations about spanking and understanding the right amount of pressure or the right timing or making a connection first, then it being playful, like it's actually something I enjoy now. And that's the difference in being able to have those conversations and that communication and having that commitment um, to doing it together and to saying, I'm not going to allow this when it just doesn't feel right inside. And that's when you know you've hit a boundary. It doesn't feel right. It's a violation. You don't need to. This is one thing my teacher Kendra Kunoff has also taught me. A boundary is just there. You don't need to find it to try and set it. You can just feel it in your own body. And then it's just an expression and trying to hold it. But the boundary is already there somewhere inside of you. So and again, that kindness, so staying committed to it with the firmness, there's no slipperiness in terms of, well, yeah, I have to explain it and I have to put so much energy into it. And because as you begin to explain and try and defend it, you're giving them whatever they may need to argue against it. It doesn't need a whole long explanation. Just coming with your heart and your commitment and that kindness and respect for them in the process too. And this is such a process because I find that when people first become aware of their boundaries and they first want to communicate them, either we could have this slipperiness, right? Or this trying to explain it, or we could just have just straight up anger and frustration and kind of just trying to set people straight. And then that causes some defensiveness too. But when there's this respect for them, for the relationship, for yourself, a kindness in setting it, and that I'm doing this out of love, those tend to be what I see the most effective ways to go about it. And then the last thing is approaching the feeling of loneliness. And I just want to really honor how difficult that is. I feel like in our culture, loneliness has somewhat of shame attached to it. Like there's something that we're doing wrong, that we shouldn't feel lonely. And I came across this for myself in relationship and really struggling in relationship, and someone telling me, oh, you're lonely. And I thought, I'm in relationship. I've got people all around me. How could I be lonely? And they said, that's the worst kind there is being in relationship and being lonely. And, but I couldn't see it because I think of that societal pressure to not be lonely, that there's something shameful in that emotion. And especially in this culture, we're so pushed to be so independent and self-reliant. And so the idea of loneliness, of needing someone, can bring about those feelings of shame when we know anything about human nature, it's that we are a species that relies on connection for our survival. We're one of the only species that when our babies are born, they can't live on their own. They need that love, they need that connection just to survive. And not only that, not just getting their needs met, food and water and shelter, but they need to feel love in order to thrive. And we all need that. And so accepting there's nothing wrong with you for needing connection. There's nothing wrong with you for wanting that connection. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling the sadness and the grief for relationships not going the way you want them to go. And this is a time to get extra support, maybe from a therapist or a coach or friends, or trying to meet new people in different ways, or relying on old friendships or other relationships that are a little stronger, that have maybe stood this test. And really, it's a time of self-trust and a commitment to yourself and self-connection as well. And one more thing I want to remind you, I was speaking with a wonderful woman about this last night, and she said, be sure to say this. Such a good point. Remember that as you're going through this process of setting up boundaries and changing these dynamics in your life, that light at the end of the tunnel is, even if it doesn't work with this person, you are now a stand for what you want and who you are, and the people will show up. I have some wonderful people in my life that I would have never dreamed would be here, and connections newly forming that have so much juice to them because I stayed committed to this. And I see, women who are only build each other up, that would not be in my life if I hadn't committed to not gossiping and not playing into dynamics that didn't feel good for me, and not being around those types of relationships. And now I get to see that because those people did eventually show up in my life. So I hope that is helpful for you. Again, I just want to encourage you to keep going. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Even this is a small little dynamic, maybe it's one comment your mom or your sister makes to you, just saying, please don't, and holding firm to it can make a big shift in the entire ecosystem. So even if it's just like a small little one, keep going, because it is really worth it. And it may take longer than you think. It may take a little more soul searching than you think, but it is really worth it, and I know that you deserve it. If this was helpful at all to you, or you know someone else who's going through this, please share. And I can be found at tracypowerslove.com. That's Tracy with just a Y. And I'll see you next time.